So you want to write a book, eh? Many have tried. Many have failed. It's a daunting task. No. Let's get all of that fear-mongering, scary nonsense out of here. Writing a book is by no means an easy task, but it doesn't have to be some daunting, impossible goal that looms over your head. The key is finding a strategy that works for you. I know the likes of Stephen King says that not planning ahead is the best way to write a book. But in reality, the best way is the one that gets words on the page, which sounds kind of obvious when I put it that way. I guess some people just like to say that their way is the best way and that all the other ways are terrible. Sorry, Stephen. No, I'm not sorry. You're kind of a jerk sometimes. Over the next 2 videos, I'm going to outline an executable plan to write a novel in about 4 months. I want to show you the known paths and how they break apart so that you can experiment and find your own. We're going to start by talking about preparation, mainly strategy and organization, which may not sound super interesting on the surface, but can be make or break, especially for a new writer. Let's get started. Before you dive into your first novel, you want to choose a strategy that fits your writing style. There are 3 big ones that you might have heard of: plotting, planning, and pantsing. If you already know which of these applies to you, you can go ahead and hit the timestamp on screen. I'm sure you don't need to hear them described again, but if you're unfamiliar with those strategies, let me explain. Pantsing is when you write a novel by the seat of your pants. You start with a situation and write. No planning, no roadmap. Plenty of major authors write this way, like Stephen King and Margaret Atwood. Pantsers generally feel like their characters are more natural, since they don't construct them, but rather find them along the way. This method is also known as discovery writing, and generally takes a lot more editing and rewrites after the rough draft. Then there's plotting. You world build and plan your plot before you even start writing. Many authors also follow this method, like Brandon Sanderson. Plotters tend to front load a lot of the work on their projects, and generally can be a bit faster when they actually sit down to write, since they always know where they're headed. But also you can hit huge road bumps when you get halfway through your book and a major plot point doesn't actually make sense. Finally, planting, or planting, which is a combination of the previous 2. Plotting and pantsing aren't exclusive, but rather a spectrum. In reality, most writers do a little bit of both. For example, I like to make a loose plot outline and then pants my way from plot point to plot point. I have a general idea of where I'm headed, but I don't know every step along the way. I also like to do some world building before I start, because I find it distracting when it comes up while I'm trying to write. If I have a question about my world, I have to figure it out. So I like to have those questions answered from the top so they don't mess up my flow. If you're a newer writer, I'd suggest taking a swing at planting to start. It'll show you how both sides of the spectrum feel. If you find yourself clinging to the plot you've outlined, then follow that and do more planning if you need to. If you find yourself constantly pulling away from the plot you planned, feel free to abandon it. That way you don't try to pants and then constantly feel lost without a plot, or conversely do a lot of planning just to abandon it. Remember that writing a book is a lot of work, so we don't want to waste our time. So once you figure out what your base strategy is, it's time for phase 2. Writing a book is not an easy task. We're looking at 80,000 to 100,000 words, and we'll stick to 80,000 for the sake of simplicity. Even if you write 1,000 words a day, that's still an 80-day undertaking, and that's not making any time for planning. And there's something to be said about how difficult it is to write 1,000 words per day, which is something we'll touch on really quick. We'll talk about writing goals in more detail in the next video, but it's important, so I want to hit on it here. If 1,000 words a day is too much for you, that is okay. You don't have to write that much. If you are busy or you can't write for long periods of time, set a smaller goal. If you consistently set huge goals that you can't meet, it can be discouraging. So be reasonable. That's all I gotta say. If you're serious about producing a novel efficiently, You need to get organized, especially if you're plotting. You need to have a place to easily access your characters and world building and plot outlines and manuscript. Having a system to easily access your story's information can lower barriers. Sometimes not being able to find something is enough to keep you from writing. I talk more about this in my video on making writing a habit, which is a great companion piece to this one, so you should go check it out. So you should spend your first few days or a week getting comfortable with an organizational system. Here's a few options. First off, a plain old document. This could be a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document, really anything along those lines. And this is the most straightforward and probably the cheapest option. But if you do go this route, I suggest using headers. In Google Docs, using headers creates a sidebar to make navigating your information a lot quicker. However, this method isn't quite as organized and often leads to a lot of scrolling. Plus, there's less formatting options if you want to make it look pretty. And next is spreadsheets. Google Sheets, Excel, you get what I'm talking about. For example though, you can have a spreadsheet for your characters, with each row corresponding to one of those characters and each column corresponding to an attribute, like eye color, height, or backstory. Then, whenever you need those details, you can just search for the character in the spreadsheet and navigate to the correct column. This option is a bit more structured, albeit less pleasing to the eye than a document. If you do take this route though, I suggest playing with the text wrapping options. They can help you keep things condensed or make sure entries don't run off the cell. And then finally, our last option, story planning software. There are programs specifically designed to help you keep track of your story's information. Programs like Campfire Blaze. There are other options, and each planning software tends to have different features. Most have free trials though, so it may be worth taking some time to see what helps you get words on the page. Blaze lets you build elements for the different aspects of your stories, organize them, connect them, and plot them visually. And like I said, there is a free trial, so if that sounds like it would help you, try it out. There is a link in the description. The particular system you choose isn't all that important. What is important is finding a system that works for you and sticking to it. You'll want to continually update it as you go, so it'll always be there as an aid in case you get stuck or need to reference a key detail. Even pantsers can benefit from writing down details as they go. That way they don't have to do a ton of scrolling and searching through their manuscript when they forget a key detail or need to know what happened 5 chapters ago. And finally, you need a place to actually write your manuscript. And I'd advise something cloud-based if you have regular access to internet. There is no worse feeling than losing hours of writing because you forgot to save and your computer crashes, or a file gets corrupted, or the power goes out, or your nephew pulls the plug out of your computer. If your nephew pulls the plug out of your computer and you lose hours, don't live with that fear if you don't have to. The cheapest option is again Google Drive. I might advise keeping separate files for each chapter though, since the program can get really slow with large documents. You can always copy and paste those chapters into a single document if you need to print it out or share it with someone. If you already have Microsoft Word, it's a little more powerful with auto-saving options. It's a little bit pricier if you don't have it, but it's nice if you want to keep large documents. Campfire Blaze also has a manuscript editor that is fully integrated with the software. Blaze automatically tags your story elements in your manuscript so you can quickly access their information. You can even leave their page open in the sidebar for quick reference. I'd advise going all in on one organizational system if you can. Try not to split your time between multiple spaces. Keeping all of your information together will keep you efficient and lower barriers to writing. Once you've chosen your organizational system, it's time to move on to phase 3, which is planning your story. Then after that, you can get on to phase 4, which is the actual writing, when you actually sit down to write the dang thing. We'll talk about those 2 phases in our next video, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. If you have any questions, you can leave them down in a comment. I answer every single question I get. If you're feeling extra generous, you can hit that like button and hit the bell as well to make sure you definitely don't miss the next video. And you can also share it with a friend to send a passive-aggressive message about how unorganized they are. And as always, there are no actual rules. Write what you want and have fun. Thanks for watching.